no place like the Cube. Family, it's your favorite queer radio personality, Anna DeShawn, and this is Queer News, your favorite weekly news pod where race and sexuality meet politics, culture, and entertainment.
Let me tell you something. I think that because if we don't, we forfeit the right to be able to truly say or remind people why we're important at all. I think that a lot of us have it wrong. We think that this is a fight for acceptance. To me, this feels like a fight for the right to be human. And I think that this year, it wasn't enough to say trans power. It meant a lot to me to define what that power meant. And it meant that our behavior and the way that we would maneuver through the streets this year would change and impact the way that people treated us. And that was just the start.
Now that was the voice of Hope Giselle, activist, advocate, and president of the Trans Visibility March that took place on August 24th in Washington, D.C. I had the opportunity to chat with her for a bit this past week and talk about why she took on this role, right? And why in its fifth year, it is still so important. Also, before we go any further, I have a big birthday shout out. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. I know Ryan is going to absolutely love this. Ryan is our editor. Yes, he is. Happy birthday, Ryan. This podcast wouldn't get done without you. Literally, because let me tell you, okay, editing brings me no joy at all, okay? Ryan is my Virgo brother. As I celebrated my birthday on August 30th in Chile, I had COVID. I sure did. Probably from the DNC, but I also was traveling from Atlanta. Who knows? But I had it. So I spent my birthday on the couch in my basement with my puppy because my wife needed to be upstairs away from me. But there could be worse things in the world, right? So I rested and I feel refreshed, ironically enough. And I'm negative now. So there's that. So happy birthday to me too, because we about to celebrate for real now, all Virgo season. Let's be clear. Okay, so happy birthday to me and happy birthday to Ryan. Also, family, don't forget the Queer News tip line is open. I want to report on stories that don't make the news, don't make a blog, okay? That's what this platform is for. So please check the show notes and send me a story. Actually, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about the Queer News tip I got from Kevin, okay? We're going to learn about the Cast review today, okay? QCrew, what's going on? Thank you for helping to financially sustain this podcast. Thank you. How many times can I say thank you? Thank you. I don't know. But quite literally, this podcast does not exist if you all were not able to help me with the cost of this thing. It's expensive, okay? It costs some money. Podcast hosting, editing, marketing, PR, travel, Chile, it all costs. But if you're listening to this and you don't give towards the podcast, you've thought about it, you listen to the pod, you forget, but let me tell you, if you believe in this work that we do, if you believe LGBTQ stories need to be amplified, if you love and respect how I report on the news and tell our stories, join the QCrew, okay? A link is in the show notes and it starts as low as $5 a month. And family, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at E3 Radio and turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. So many interviews coming your way. So many good things. You know what I'm saying? Go subscribe. Now for the news. In politics, who's leading the polls with 62 days to go until November the 5th? Is it Harris or is it Trump? Let's talk about it. In culture and entertainment, the 5th annual Trans Visibility March took place in D.C. Let's talk about it. Over the weekend, Global Black Pride took over Atlanta, and Chappell Roan is taking heat for setting boundaries with her fans. But let me tell you, I'm a fan of these boundaries, and she's got a new fan in me, okay? And let me tell y'all my new birthday mantra, and Anna's got a word, but you got to listen to the end, to the very, very end. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Let's go. Family, in politics, y'all already know the top story, probably for this foreseeable future, is gonna be the upcoming election. 4 or 5 weeks ago now, the ticket changed. The energy changed. Everybody's perspective changed. People woke up. Okay, I can speak for myself. I wasn't even intending on going to the Democratic National Convention before the ticket changed. I'm just being honest. I had gotten booked to speak at Podcast Movement happening out in Washington, D.C. I was going to D.C. to speak, and I was just going to report on it later. I mean, what was going to be happening? But the moment the ticket changed, I put in my request to get media credentials. I text a friend I knew at the DNC, like, what's going on? Are they still giving them out? Let's go. Fingers crossed. And we got approved media credentials. I was there and covered the whole thing. I interviewed so many people, and you can get those interviews on our YouTube channel. I talked with Senator Tammy Baldwin. I talked with Ali Krager. I talked with State Senator Mike Simmons, who was the first out-state representative here in the state of Illinois. I talked with Kiera Johnson, president of the National LGBTQ Task Force Action Fund. Okay, I mean, I talked with so many people at the DNC and just asking them how they're feeling about the election now. And I mean, general consensus, hands down, people are far more energized, far more excited, far more hopeful. Yes. And if we use the actual word of the campaign, it is joy. Yes. And you could feel that in the room. I also have a couple of videos on YouTube about my experience at the DNC. If you haven't checked those out, go do that. Okay. But in this moment, let's talk about it. We are 62 days out from November 5th. Yes. And what are the polls saying? The polls are hit or miss. Chile, you can only take them as far, but they do give us a good indicator. It was part of the reason Biden said, I got to go. Okay. He put his ego aside. Okay. And said, I got to go. I'm going to step back. I'm going to let Harris step in. Yes, because the poll showed he was about 6-7 points behind Trump in any given state. Okay. Especially the swing states. And you know what I appreciate? Is that the Democratic Party did not wave the white flag in that moment. I was talking to a lot of people, and a lot of people were like, we can't change now. It's too late. It's too late. That's what they said. They said it's unprecedented. That's what they said. And somebody at the Democratic Party was like, it has to happen. You know, many folks have said that was the Obamas. Yes. I'm sure it was. And probably some other trusted confidants that said this has to happen. And they did. They made it happen, and things have shifted. They have changed. And so the polls today are showing that Harris is up 2 to 4 percentage points overall. Yes. And I think it's important for us to always remember that it's not about the popular vote. Democrats have won the popular vote for the last 8 years, 12 years. I mean, it's been a very long time since Democrats have not won the popular vote in the U.S. But that electoral college hits different. We got to get 270. Yes. And we can debate about popular vote versus electoral college on a different day. But the electoral college is what's in play. And let's talk about these 7 swing states. Yes. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, if you are voting blue, you know somebody that lives in these states. I know you do, because I do. Yes, we have family that lives in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. So when we talk about going out and to vote, it is important that we go out and vote, everybody, but it is especially important that people that we know in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin go out and vote. And let me tell y'all why. In each of these 7 states, the advantage of either candidate is barely a point. Sometimes it's a point, a small point, but there is nobody running away with this race in these swing states. Now, let me give you a quick rundown state by state, and let me tell y'all what's happening. In Arizona, Trump is leading in 2 of the 3 major polls, but not even by a point, by 0.5. of a point, okay? In Georgia, Harris is up in 2 of the polls. One of them is by 1 point, but Chile, Georgia is finicky. Georgia is red until Georgia is not, okay? Atlanta might be blue, but Georgia is definitely red. In Michigan, Harris is winning in all 3 polls, so that is a fantastic sign, okay? That's a good sign. Vote blue, okay? In Nevada, Harris is up in 2 of the polls, and they're tied in a 3rd poll. So that one is really up in the air, but it has traditionally, gone red. Let's be clear. But Harris is slightly ahead. In North Carolina, Trump is winning in all 3 polls. Trump will probably get North Carolina. It's still very southern, it's still very red, and it still has a lot of conservatives. In Pennsylvania, yes, Harris is up in all 3 polls. That is a very good sign to get Pennsylvania. And then in Wisconsin, Harris is up in all 3 polls, which is also a wonderful sign. And 2 of those polls that she's up by a point, which in comparison to these other polls, that is a big deal. So what's the deal? We got to go out and vote, especially in these swing states. If you are somebody who doesn't know what you can do, you can call the Democratic National Party and see how you can get involved. There are all sorts of options. You don't have to knock on people's doors. You don't always have to call people. You don't have to go in somewhere. They've got all different types of ways you can do outreach in this election. But let me tell you something. The way that these 270 electoral college votes are set up, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin are the states that are going to make or break this here election, which I think is interesting, as the first presidential debate between Harris and Trump is set to take place on Tuesday, September the 10th at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and it's taking place in Pennsylvania. Yes, which makes a ton of sense because it is one of those swing states. They're going back and forth about the rules, but at the end of the day, that one is what is set, and we look forward to watching it. Yeah, we sure do. For our top story today, it's actually a story that I sourced from one of my colleagues, Nico, who manages the Queer News Daily Instagram account. I don't know if y'all follow Queer News Daily, but if you don't, you should. You should support Nico. Nico does a fantastic job sharing queer news in this way, and I have added him as one of my sources, and you should too, because I think he does a wonderful job. I saw this story and I just knew I had to amplify it, because back in March of this year, I reported about Alex Franco is a trans man who was murdered in Utah. His body was found in a very remote area. The story goes that he was reportedly going to buy a gun. He got into a car with people who he thought were friends, 3 young men. 2 were 17 and 1 was 15 years old. And the story goes that those young men never intended on selling him a gun. They actually were trying to rob him. And in the midst of all of that, one of them actually shot him. And the reason I remember this story so vividly is because I don't often report on trans men. It's not something that often makes the news, even if and when it does occur. And so trans men's stories definitely stand out in my mind because they just don't happen as often where they make the news. And Alex's story especially touched me because I remember a part of the story was that his girlfriend came out. She heard the shot and she saw the car take off, and she actually ran after the car until she couldn't run anymore. And I also remember this story because Alex's grandfather made a post, and such a touching post, on Facebook about how Alex cared for him and loved him, and that he was so proud that he had transitioned. And so often our birth families, in the stories that I report, they dead name, right, the person, or they, misgender them. And sometimes you just don't know the relationship. Actually, most of the time, you don't know. As a reporter, I don't know these people, right? I'm just reporting on the story, and you don't know the relationship. And I find that lots of trans folks give their families grace, especially depending upon where they are in their transition. But in this particular story, this grandfather talked about just how much he loved the fact that Alex had transitioned, because he was such a more happy person, point blank period, that he had just found himself. And it was just such a beautiful thing. It stands out to me. And so when I saw that Nico posted this, I had to share this with y'all. Yes, of course I did. So Alex's girlfriend is actually looking to buy a headstone, a bench for Alex's grave. Okay. These things are expensive. Can we be very clear? Why is it so expensive to bury our dead? I do not know, but it is. And so she has started a GoFundMe, and it's been struggling for the last couple of months, is my understanding. And her goal is to raise $8,000. Before Nico posted this, it was at about $800. Now it's at $1,500. Lots of anonymous donations. I'm seeing lots of $5. I see an anonymous $500 donation made 4 days ago as I'm recording. And so if you're listening to this and you've got some extra cash, you got $5 to give, $10 or even more, I'm going to post the link to the GoFundMe in the show notes so that you can access it. She's just looking to create a space for Alex, not only the headstone, but a bench. She says that he would love for people to be able to come and talk with him and still share life with him in this place, even though he's not there physically. So if you can give, do. If you can't, that's okay. Share the campaign. That's what we do around here. Family, our next story is coming from our Queer News tip line. You heard me mention this a few weeks ago. Thank you, Kevin, for sending this my way. It was a story about the cast review. And what I loved about Kevin's note was that he not only sent information about the story, he sent the podcast child, sent me time codes to listen to. Kevin, if you're listening to this, I appreciate you. Okay. And so I wanted to share information about the cast review after doing my own research, listening to that podcast, and just reading more about it. So the cast review was put together as a research study by Dr. Hilary Cass, hence why it's called the cast review. Now, this cast review came about because in Britain, and this was based out of the UK, let me also say that, the National Health Service, known as NHS, Mental Health Trust's Gender Identity Development Services. Child, these names, they're always long and complicated, okay? But it was their Gender Identity Development Services. They called them GIDS, okay? This is where folks who were looking or seeking gender affirming care would go in the UK. Now, the cast review went and studied how effective GIDS was, okay? And the thing is, I didn't see a lot of articles about the cast review because it is dense, okay? This whole topic and this research is really dense. And so it's a lot to wade through. So there aren't lots of articles. And then also people who are affirming, right, of gender affirming care didn't see this review in the best light. And so they didn't want to amplify it. And then folks who are against gender affirming care have started to use this review as a tool, you know, and really have weaponized this as saying, yo, gender affirming care for minors should not be a thing. So I wanted to wade through this review, and because one, Kevin sent it as a Queer News tip, okay, and I want to honor that, especially as I look for y'all to send me more Queer News tips. And then also I think it's just interesting to learn about these other queer news stories that are not only happening here in the US, but around the world, because we know whatever happens wherever the queers lives affects all of us. Yes, we can never forget none of us are free until all of us are free. So the National Health Service, NHS, okay, and then there is GIDS, the Gender Identity Development Services. So basically this report came out and it said that GIDS was inefficient. It said that GIDS was not serving the people as it should. And as I started to read more of the article, it seemed like that was really true. People were on this waiting list for gender affirming care for 5 years. People had requested an appointment and still had never been seen. 5 years? 5 years? I've been through puberty. Okay, puberty is over for me. Okay. And so there were other stories about people who were on the list who actually committed suicide, right? Took their own lives because they had not received the care that they were looking for because GIDS was not serving people. So in response to that, there was only one office in all of UK that was serving gender affirming care. One. How wild is that? That's why it was inefficient. There weren't enough people serving them. And so it's because of this report, there have been 2 other offices that have opened to help care and to see people who are looking for gender affirming care, which is a plus. The other result that came out of this review was that the CAS review said that there wasn't enough data to truly say whether minors should receive gender affirming care. And so what happened with that is that people who are against it said, we can't prescribe puberty blockers or anything like that because there isn't enough research. And now the CAS review has confirmed that, so we're getting rid of it. And so that's essentially what has happened. They have stopped providing puberty blockers, right, for folks seeking gender affirming care. And the doctor that led this review, Dr. Cass, she said that she is really frustrated at how people are misrepresenting her data and the research and using it to wield their own good or evil out here in the world. And they wanted her to do an additional study, and she said, no, not me. Don't tap me ever again for this. Because her life has been turned upside down. Like so many other people who, are in this conversation around gender affirming care, all types of negative things happen when people begin to associate your name to things they don't agree with, because the trolls, Chile, it can become very unsafe very quickly. And she said, I want nothing to do with this. So all in all, it seems as though this report can be used either for good or for bad, just depending on where you sit. And it also seems as though they didn't really gather enough participants. They wanted to gather 9,000. They ended up gathering 3,300. Right. And some of the people who did participate in the study, who were on puberty blockers and who were receiving gender affirming care, didn't feel seen in the final results either. So it just feels kind of incomplete. So thanks, Kevin, for the queer news tip. Now we all know about the CAS review and also know why it's so important to have data. Data helps to inform our lives. And now we just need more studies done. Because what we know for sure is that less than 1% of folks who actually participate in transition actually detransition. Only 1%. It's very small. People who want to transition are very clear this is what they need to do in order to survive. Yes, and we want to be able to support that. We love our trans siblings around here. And I think this is a great time for us to take a quick break. And when we get back, let's dig into some culture and some entertainment.
Welcome to Joy in the Breakthrough, a podcast where we'll be talking to a wide range of leaders from different generations and backgrounds. Leaders who have found power in being broken open. I'm Connie Lindsay.
And I'm Anna Valencia. We are your hosts, and we believe that our challenges can lead to breakthroughs, and we want to share these insights with you.
We hope these stories will inspire you to find the I'm possible in you.
Listen to Joy in the Breakthrough on Thursdays and follow them on social media at Joy ITB Pod. Listen inside the queue or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're hearing this, it means we didn't sell this ad space. If you're hearing this, it means running ads on our podcast actually can work. You see what I did there? You see this real life example? You got an event, do you have an organization, do you got something you need to get the word out about? We got rates starting as low as $100. Check the link in our show notes for more information.
Once we got back around that corner on Connecticut and I saw the HRC building again, I broke because I was like, we did it? We did it? We did it. I did it. We all did it, right? And it was just one of those moments where, like, I had heard the whispers, and I'm still hearing the whispers. There are some people who are of non-melanated understanding that I've heard have felt very strongly about my ego and say that the idea that I mentioned the fact that there are people that came there to watch me fail. I think that to my non-melanated family, y'all don't understand that sometimes the infighting within Black queer culture is a thing. And it meant a lot to me that after all of that, even with the people that did come just to watch me fail, we did it. And so that's what that was about. They were happy tears.
Family, welcome back to the show. And you should recognize her voice by now. That was Hope Giselle. And I asked her to tell me about a photo that I saw captured where she looked overcome. Weak, right? Her community members were holding her up, and it was during the actual march. And when I asked her about it, she smiled and replied, what you heard. So it is very hard being vulnerable out here in the world. It's hard when your vulnerable moment is caught on camera, okay? But it is my job to ask. And so I did. And that was her response. So let me just say also, as someone who's done community work, it is hard work and it's also heart work, right? And as someone who has done community work, right, sat on boards, it is hard work and it is heart work, okay? And we get into all of that in the interview, so I hope y'all go tap in on our YouTube channel, all right? It'll be up come Thursday because the QCrew has to get it first, yes? And let me tell you about the Trans Visibility March, right? It's in its 5th year. Hope is the president, and it started in 2019 in DC. It was founded by Marissa Miller with the goal of amplifying trans issues, amplifying the need to sign the Equality Act, because that would include gender identity, yes, and to remind people that trans folks are here. Well, this year, she turned over the power to Hope Giselle to run this march, and she did. It took place August 24th in D.C., and according to the Washington Blade, approximately 400 people attended the march that started and ended at the Human Rights Campaign headquarters. Yes, it looked beautiful. I checked out the social media. I talked with Hope. It looked like the people gathered, the people chanted, "Trans power, trans power, trans power." It looked like the people were inspired. They were gathered. Okay. And the pictures were so cute. So, we can't get enough of these moments where we have an opportunity to raise our voices for what we believe in. Oftentimes, people will forget about you if you do not raise your voice. So I was happy to see that the Trans Visibility March went off, and it was a huge success because the brass tacks of it is, according to translegislation.com, there has been 642 anti-trans bills considered. Yes, 642. Across 42 states. We've only got 50, of which 45 have passed. So when we say that they are not winning, they are not winning, but the propaganda hurts. Yes. Yes, it does. Hope, congratulations. Congratulations to everybody who was part of the organizing team for the Trans Visibility March. And we look forward to next year when it will be back in DC and colliding with World Pride. Let's go. Now for our next story in culture entertainment. Did y'all know that there was a global Black Pride? Yeah, there is. There is a global Black Pride. It started in 2020 and was organized by Global Black Gay Men Connect. Yes, and they started Global Black Pride. Well, this year, they coincided and partnered with Atlanta Black Pride. So let me tell you, this past weekend, it was litty in Atlanta. I was not there because, of course, I had COVID. But I digress. Global Black Pride was a mood. I was able to take it in on social media. They had the 5th annual Mayor's Global Black Pride reception. It looked beautiful. It took place in Atlanta City Hall. If you have never been to Atlanta City Hall, let me just tell you, it is a really beautiful city hall. But Global Black Pride also had the exhibition center with main stage with performers. There was a human rights and health conference. There was a Pride political leaders roundtable. There was a Black trans rally. There was a Black Pride influencers award dinner. Chile. There was a freedom march. There was a festival. Can I just tell you, there was a mood from August 27th through September the 1st. No Black queer people in Atlanta slept. Okay, this is the rundown for Global Black Pride. This is not even the number of parties, the number of events that was happening in Atlanta this past weekend. It was litty from what I can tell, okay? And I also reported about the story where we saw that the exhibit hall was actually vandalized. I reported on this the moment I saw it. I was going to bed and I said, I need to stay awake and share this information. I haven't heard if they're doing anything to support the vendors, or if there's any way we can support the vendors. People ransacked the entire exhibit hall. They actually, there's no good way to say this, family. They actually poop on the Black Gay Pride flag. Yes, all over it. They actually pooped just randomly on the floor. They threw flyers on the floor, destroyed televisions, destroyed people's setups. It was disgusting, honestly. And if I hear of any way that we can support the vendors, because I know how expensive it is to vend, how expensive it is to ship your things, to set up, Okay, the labor is so real. And so if I hear of anything, I'll definitely share it. And it looked like they didn't focus on it. They didn't sit with that. They healed from it. They set up and they kept pushing forward. And it looks like it was a wonderful weekend. So congratulations, Global Black Pride. I see you. I see you. And for our last story today in culture and entertainment, let's talk about Chappell Roan. Let's be very clear. I didn't even think I knew who this person was. She is a queer artist, yes. And I had to go listen to the music and I was like, oh, I know that song. Okay, yes. I think I heard it on TikTok, you know. One of our committed listeners, Susan, and supporters sent me a story from Good. If you don't know this site, literally all they talk about is good news, okay? And it was about Chappell Roan, and it was about how she has raised over $160,000 for the Human Rights Campaign and for reproductive rights through this site. Have y'all heard of this site or have you ever used this site? It is called Propeller. The whole idea is that you do things, you get rewards, and those rewards go to other things that you want. Yes. So in Chappell Roan's case, she's supporting HRC and reproductive rights. So people take actions, whether it's watching a video about HRC, joining HRC, supporting reproductive rights. There's all these types of actions you can take, and they give you points. And then you get these points and rewards. Yes. And then you can apply for these prizes. Usually meet and greets with Chappell Roan herself. You can also get enough points to get a t-shirt or other gifts. It's actually really dope. It's like a way to do good without necessarily having to spend money, but just taking action. Because oftentimes that's what we don't know how to do, is actually what actions can I take to be helpful? Not that we don't want to be helpful, we just don't know how. So Propeller seems to be a place where you can do that. Well, Chile, she has done that, okay? On Propeller, she's had over 150,000 supporters, raised over $160,000, and generated over 220,000 actions. People want to meet Chappell Roan, okay? Which leads to other stories that I found as I was researching more about her. Yes, she recently came out and said, good people, I need some space, I need some boundaries. And oftentimes celebrities are really hesitant to set these boundaries because they don't want to upset their fans. They understand that they wouldn't be here without their fans. And it's a really cautious tightrope, yes, with the fans. But Chappell Roan said, hello, let me knock on this here microphone on this here Instagram and tell y'all what I need. I need boundaries. Okay, is what she said. She says, I chose this career path because I love music and art and honoring my inner child. I do not accept harassment of any kind because I chose this path, nor do I deserve it. Because of course, what people say is, you are a celebrity, you wanted to make this music, you blew up, and this is what you have to deal with. And she's saying, no, I do not have to deal with this. In fact, okay. And she says, I embrace the success of this project, the love I feel, and the gratitude I have. What I do not accept are creepy people, being touched and being followed. Because Chile, they do that. People touch you now and they don't even know you. I'll be like, can you give me some space, please? In America, we like space. Okay. So what she says is, please stop touching me. Please stop being weird to my family and friends. And she says, I feel more love than I have ever in my life. I feel the most unsafe I have ever felt in my life. And that is real. That is real. And I'm proud of her for setting boundaries, because we need those. You need boundaries. And if you're upset by what she said, I ask you to do what she asked you to do. Take a step back and reflect on why you're getting so upset about somebody setting boundaries. Probably because you need to set some boundaries in your own life. I'm just saying that's typically the case. So, Chappell Roan, you got a new fan in me, because I appreciate this. All right, family, you know what it is. It's time for Anna's Got a Word, because Anna's always got a word. And my word today that I want to share with you all is my new mantra for my 41st year of life. Yes. And, you know, so often we look at the beginning of the year as our reset, but I feel like my birthday is a good day to reset. Yes, it's my new year. This is it. And my new mantra for this year is, if I want different results, I have to do things differently. It's not anything new. It's not a new quote, but it's something that I really want to live by this year. I have found great success over the last 3 years of quitting corporate America, doing this full time. And in the grand scheme of things, I am still at the very beginning of this journey. Even given that I did my first show in November of 2009, it's one thing to do something as a passion project, give it all you got. Yes, I've did hundreds of interviews from 2009 up until 3 years ago when I quit corporate. Hundreds, okay? I've been out here working, building a fan base in Chicago, but when I was ready to go out and take the big leap of faith, it's a whole nother ballgame. It's a whole nother game out here in these streets to do this full time. And I'm at the point where I want to take it up a notch. Yeah, I really want to step into what I feel like I'm really called to do and that next dream and that next goal. And to share it with you all, I do. I want to be a career news correspondent. Yes, my North Star is Robin Roberts, always has been. And 20-year-old Anna wasn't comfortable being on camera because there wasn't anybody that looked like me. There was no example of a masculine or center woman on television. There still isn't, yes? But maybe I'm that person, you know? And I feel like queer news brings me a lot of joy to share news that's happening in the queer community. And I want to be that queer news correspondent. And so how can I get there? And how can I lay the pathway for that dream? And so that's what we're working towards. And if I want different results, I have got to do things differently. I'm currently recording this podcast while being live on TikTok. I have to build a platform. I'm clear that folks don't want to be a part of building an audience. I have to have an audience. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to the very end. Thank you for supporting this podcast. It still brings me a lot of joy. And if you've ever heard me speak, you'll know that I say that I will continue to do this until it doesn't. And if you've ever heard me speak about the podcast, you've heard me say that I will continue to do this as long as it continues to bring me joy. And when it stops bringing me joy, that's when I know it's time to move on to something new. But until then, family, I'm going to be back here next week with more queer news stories. Till then, peace. If you've enjoyed what you heard, rate and review us inside your favorite podcasting app. This podcast is written and produced by me, Anna DeShawn. Podcast editing by Ryan Woodhall. And brought to you by E3 Radio and distributed on The Cube. We are Queer News Done Right.